for a very long time, people in those communities, in those coastal communities, had a very, very hard time living there, right? Because children were having nightmares, parents were worried that they could not actually protect their children, and communities of fisher villages were actually feeling all of these symptoms at the same time. That would be an example of some of the symptoms of group level trauma. And you don't know if it's your own, are you feeling it on behalf of somebody else, maybe your neighbor or your relative? All right. So any questions on any of this? This is all sounding familiar? Remembered all of it from the last time? Okay.
Yes.
Good. So now let's talk about psychological first aid. So the best way to think about psychological first aid is it is the help that we provide one another immediately after a disaster or a crisis has happened. And when I say crisis or disaster, we're not talking just about big scale events, right? Like a war or like terrorism, or those are all great examples, but I'm also actually talking about everyday things that happen in our life, and you happen to be the person there next to somebody else and you have an opportunity to help them. So those are also considered crises and disasters. So psychological first aid, it's an evidence-based approach. And what I mean by evidence-based is that it's scientifically shown over and over again that these steps, when you take them to help someone who's had a crisis, have proved to be really, really helpful. So it's not just somebody's feeling that this is actually a good thing. It's actually proven in science that these steps really help individuals when they're in a crisis situation. And it's a method that we use to help children, adolescents, teenagers, right, adults, and families in an immediate aftermath of a disaster or a crisis situation. So let's say you're in the maternity ward and someone you've been helping is about to go into labor, right? They could be experiencing that as a crisis. Like, you know that maybe they're going to be okay, they're in a hospital, but for them, it feels like a crisis. So what you're going to do immediately to help them is what we call psychological first aid. Anything that you do to like calm them down, help them realize that they're in safe hands, not over-promising, right? Making sure that they understand. You remember last time we talked about in trauma, choice is very important. When you're in a crisis, you're not going to keep that in mind. So you become kind of their spokesperson to help them. And psychological first aid is actually designed to reduce any initial distress caused by traumatic events and to foster short and long-term adaptive functioning and coping. So imagine if you see somebody who got hurt, right, and they're bleeding, what is the first thing you're going to do? Anyone, just unmute and tell me. You're walking on the road, somebody just fell in front of you, and they're bleeding. What would you do?
Use some water to stop bleeding. Do something to
Stop the blood.
Exactly, right?
And
So
if someone else is also with us, we can ask them to call ambulance to take them to the nearest hospital.
Exactly. So you're going to do what you can right away, which is like stop the bleeding. You may have a sweater, you may have a scarf, whatever, and you're going to try, like help them stabilize. You're also going to mobilize people around you, right? Because you can't be doing everything in the moment. You can't be holding this person's arm and be the one calling. Maybe you have to, but you're going to mobilize the people around you. All of those actions are what we call psychological first aid because it's in response to the distress that's immediate. Yes, Amuda, go ahead.
Ma'am, this is not psychological first aid right now. This is physically he is wounded and we are giving first aid to them. Psychological first aid means when they are emotionally depressed, frustrated, That is the first
Yes.
aid we have to give for psychological, right? Am I correct or
You
I
are absolutely correct, and that was the link that I'm going to make next, which is this person who's just gotten hurt, right? What is their state of mind in general? Like, how are they feeling in the moment? We've all had something like this happen. How are they likely to be feeling?
Thoughts? Nothing should happen to me. I have to take care of
Exactly.
my family. My family depends on me. Like that only we will think, right?
Right.
When we
Or-
got hurt.
Exactly. Or they could be very scared, right? You see people
Yes.
who get like they haven't seen blood, they can't. That whole set of actions you take to like stabilize, help someone feel a little better. You may say to them, don't be scared. I have help on the way.
Yes.
Who can I call for you, right? Is there somebody I should call like from your family to let them know? So all of these steps actually helps them emotionally settle down too, right?